Again, starting out early. See, adding some music today. Let's lower that volume a bit. Go.
Check it out, 1, 2. Steady undercover, duck, don't move. This is Stick Up Jack for the melody, beats and groove. Attend steady school, packing fine tools. The most unusual crew with the most eloquent, orchestrating the moves. Danger, my man's flow is spherical. Similar, my tongue is lyric. Arsenal, bold headlines, reading the article. Murder Ramon, let it be known. Spitting two-tongue Bolivian street orator to the core from the street corridor. My stopping ground renowned, but show the shot town with a crown and the pitchfork pound. What was the sound in the background? Most up with high top, breathe out with shice crops. You could catch a quick red like a stop. Or go read in the valley of the rope. With caution, most yellow bellies get wrapped up in the choke. Scrapping for the diamond bucket, smack with the cold. Majority, I believe this the place to be, but I can't guarantee that sweet chivalry. It's the good, bad, and ugly, based on what I see. This place makes a backbone and weather's reality. January sights, July is hot tea, and the Almighty is my hope when I grieve. My people getting cooked in the beef, so we echo the words to get free. Plus, bring the meat to the matter, no matter how the grease and scatter. My papa cooked the purest better to take a taste of the heaven sent with that street medicine. Best be hesitant, cause it's line from the urban tenement. Got fangs covered in relevant sentiment. Suave. Yeah, freedom is what my people say. Yeah, freedom is what my people.
Good morning to those watching.
Is what my people say. Check it out, yeah, freedom is what my people say. Yeah, freedom is what my people want.
Feel free to join in if you're available.
It's all a cry for when awakening to those that have slept. Don't let the outer core cause you to let judgment pass through. Help emancipate and plan to fate. Someone has to, I ask you to join this regiment in the trenches and bring an optimistic aroma to all of the senses. Defenseless are the opponents. Take freedom and own it. Think composite components to change our lives as we know it. From poets to politicians, there's no one to stop our mission. And those that have stopped to listen have grown when they caught the vision. Listen to your city speak. Tune your ears with precision. Then answer the call with constructive criticism. Lift and remove the blame as we soothe the pain. Keep in mind, sometimes we gotta lose to gain. Aim for the promised land like the sand on the seashore. Then look ahead so you can see what to reach for. We need more troops that'll shoot for the truth and loosen the news to produce the new rooted roots of the youth groove. Ain't coinciding with the spirit. Your freedom is here, cause when it talks, I can hear it. Yeah,
freedom is what my people say. Yeah, freedom is what my people want. Yeah, freedom is what my people say. Check it out, 1, 2. Come on, yeah, freedom is what my people say. Yeah, freedom is what my people want. Freedom is what my people say. Yeah.
Sky and landscape drapes adjacent to our retinas, letting us experience samples of what's been set for us. We better clutch and get a touch of the rush before it dissipates. We men of faith that penetrate the interstates that generate
the pace, cause we hustle over breaks. Hip-hop was live bait, so we ate until our freight was full. In the belly of the beast, yo, the fatty wall is deep, but we dagger to the meat, slicing through the cycle of the street.
Sweeping through metros, outskirts and pueblos. Let's grow through thresholds, mold and let go of everything that brings weight down on our spine. Our backbone's the foundation that supports in the mind.
Up in some desperate times, a Vietnam time bomb, similar to the state we on. We scrap for crumbs with punctured lungs, so we all will spit with tongues. Freedom in the midst of the middle of the evening. Freedom is what my people say. Yeah, freedom is what my people want. Check it. Freedom is what my people say. Check it out, 1, 2. Come on, yeah, come on. Freedom is what my people say. Yeah, freedom is what my people want. Yeah, freedom is what my people say. Come on. Check it out, 1, 2, get that freedom. Come on, freedom, come on, check it out, 1, 2. Steady undercover,
song.
don't move. This is Stick Up Jack for the melody beats and groove. Attend steady school pack. Yo.
Maybe I can add some new music. Let's try this.
I'm aboard in this mission to play me like I'm in a body in the water with wide array of purposes. Unfortunate these lines that can't hold me back from the truth. I choose the path I'm headed in.
This.
I pass the lines that are crevices. The wrinkles down with mention it. I'm best within, I'm best because these lines that can't
Um,
hold me. Feels like I'm running out of time. Every time I see these lines, oh, I fight to vitalize, I fight to vitalize. I said lately, feels like I'm running out of time. Every time I see these lines, oh, I fight to vitalize, I fight to vitalize. They say to get in where you fit and I throw a fit and get living. Go and get out evicted, don't color outside the limits. Lines that hold in prison, I am soul and infinite. And these lines that cannot hold me. I know I'm aging when lines start to scar and lay up. My face, a human race, bordering life is carbon paper. Less than impressive, use of success, impress on you with lines that cannot hold me. Feels like I'm running out of time. Every time I see these lines, oh, I fight to vitalize, I fight to vitalize. I say lately, feels like I'm running out of time. Every time I see these lines, oh, I fight to vitalize, I fight to vitalize. What defines me? Well, when I be the days I'm walking blindly at the timely age of 95. We need to take a fight, realize we might be fighting with ourselves within the.
Let's try this one. Some new music for you. Well, I guess it starts with an old piece of music. It'll transition to something new. Anybody recognize this? The intro piece is a Mozart. I'm blanking on the name. What kind of music teacher am I? Hey,
I got the building's Wi-Fi this time, so it should
All
work
right.
a little better.
your connection already sounds better.
Okay, good. That means it's working. I just got finished watching Paul's big long video about the Jesus Revolution and all that.
I haven't seen it yet. How was that?
It was good. It was very interesting. Because it's like there's so much overlap with today's culture, but there's a lot of stuff that's much different. Like the the drug culture that I grew up with was much more meaningless and dark. Like psychedelics got really popular when I was like about halfway through high school.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like it's not the same. People were not. I mean, there was a little bit of like, oh, it makes you, I don't know, see the world different, but it was much less meaning behind it at all. It was mostly just to get fucked up,
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. I listened to these stories of like the 60s and like pot being spiritual is just like so laughable, I guess. I find it interesting.
Well, I think to a certain degree, it's one of those where different people approached it in different ways, and which of those approaches get documented the most, right?
Mm-hmm.
Both
Yeah.
my parents got into the drug world a bit in the 60s for a variety of reasons. Like my dad was more like into like the rock and roll, experimenting with the party scene a bit, but then also he sold. He was a bit of a dealer as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I don't think he was looking for any type of meaning in there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very odd. Like the psychedelic culture that I saw emerging got really wrapped up with like rap music culture.
Okay, yeah.
And it's pretty hard to have like deep spiritual anything. Like there was this whole movement that it kind of went along with, I remember, of like these rappers that came out of New York City that were like all, kind of adopting this kind of hippie rock star aesthetic. But it was still ultimately, if you listen to their lyrics, they can't escape from the culture that they inherited. It's still a lot of it is just about sex and money. And so it's super weird. Like the young never really saw much spirituality behind the, taking mushrooms and acid. It was always just kind of like hilarious or something. And so it's more, I feel like lately, how it's kind of combined with the AI stuff is mostly, I feel like, I don't know, it's like a lot of adults, which is very kind of disappointing, to be honest. It's kind of disappointing to see like all these adults like Jordan Peterson be like, oh, is there something deeper about, taking mushrooms? It's like, do you know where these mushrooms grow from? They grow out of like cow shit. Like there's something symbolic about that alone that I just don't see it being like this higher meaning stuff.
Well, for me, it's like I don't mind the question.
I don't mind the question. That's not what I said it a little harsh, but
yeah, because I feel like it's one of those where for the longest time, especially in evangelical communities, the question was faux pas. It was taboo. You're not allowed to go there. And then, is there potentially something that we're missing there? I think there's some validity in that question.
Yeah, because I mean, you get into like some of the legalist traditions where like cigarettes are bad, and it's like, okay, like, geez Louise, guys.
Yeah, and I think, in Peterson, when a lot of times he speaks about it, he's like, hey, there's been experiments tried that have been helpful to some people. And then the question is, well, why has it been helpful? And I think that's something worth exploring. But it's similar to like music because, like, for example, I've always been a bit curious about the whole like conscious or altered state of consciousness. From psychedelics, but also through like experimentation with lighting, and then also sound, right? Like for example, psychedelics are pretty popular in like the club scene. If you look at the club scene, most club scenes, or large part of club scene, where there's a lot of music and lighting and smoke and stuff like that, a big common element in the music is this pulsing music, right? Boom, 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 boom. If you look at some of the more, the charismatic church Hillsongs, a lot of these places, you go to one of these concerts, a common element in a lot of the music is this pulsing. Boom, boom, boom. So there's this way of doing music that a lot of people are connecting with some kind of spiritual experience. Is it really a spiritual experience? Maybe, but let's say it is. Let's say hypothetically I granted you that it is a spiritual experience. Well, what kind? A positive one? A negative one? A neutral, values neutral one?
That's kind of the tricky thing with this whole spiritual term is it's almost taken, if it's spiritual, it's good.
Yes, exactly. But I wouldn't necessarily say that if it's spiritual that it's bad either.
Right.
I would say if it's spiritual, you want to tread carefully.
Yeah.
Where's this line from? Life's a bitch and then you die. I know I recognize that from somewhere.
Probably an older rap song that I'm not, or maybe a rock song. Maybe a movie.
But yeah, there's this connection between like music that leads to this experience, or maybe loss of self-control experience that people call a spiritual experience. But the same thing happens with these drugs. And what is the connection? And is there any value to exploring that?
So I this kind of thought came to me because this is something that me and my friends always talk about. Is kind of how you were saying, where it's like, just last week there was like Winter Jam, which is just like you said, like this Hillsong style huge concert of Christian bands.
Yeah.
But all kids go there. Not all kids, but like the crowd is like all of the youth. And I just always noticed that like there's something, and maybe this is just my problem or something, but there's something that feels less or more shallow about that whole experience than if you were to go to like a rave on drugs or something. Like we used to kind of joke, it's like they're just doing this because they don't have drugs or something.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And so,
and I think to a certain degree, because when I was in the church, youth group scene, we would say the opposite. Like those people are going to the raves and the drugs because they don't have this.
Totally. And so I think that take, like I've evolved from that take. I don't see things as cynical as I used to, but at the same time, I was working downtown and I was watching this whole crowd for Winter Jam show up and all this stuff. And that kind of thought kind of came up again, I suppose, where it's like, man, these, they're not, they're dressed just like other, secular people. There's really no separation of culture that, shows them as like, I don't know. It's such a crazy, weird world.
Yeah, it is.
It's so weird. It's so strange. So I guess my question is like, how do you, like I suppose it's a question of a balance, what's the balance there maybe?
Yeah. And then the other aspect is that, I feel like, I hear Paul, and I don't listen to everything Paul puts out, but I feel like he, and even Pajot to a certain degree, are very like dismissive of the whole psychedelic experience.
Which I don't like. I wish they would.
Yeah. And it's not that I'm like, I think that the psychedelic experience is going to be the savior for people, but it's one of those where I feel like it's an avenue that's unexplored. And so I kind of reserve judgment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because if you just dismiss it, kids will do what kids will do, and they'll try to answer it for themselves. It is a serious question to this culture.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, well, which one's healthier? And to a certain degree, like, for example, you have a lot of youth that go to these youth concerts and whatever, and maybe experience something, and a lot of people say, well, that's healthier. Well, except that 10 years later, they come to hate everything associated with that. Some of them do. And they think that's what church and religion and Christianity is.
Right.
And is that overall healthier for them? I don't know.
Right.
I don't know that that's any better.
Yeah. It's yeah, it's very strange. Like, I don't know. People are just so, I think, ready to, like, they're kind of jumping the gun in this corner because we've gone so down the rabbit hole that people are like, oh, liturgy's making a comeback and this and that. And it's like, there's a huge culture out there that's still stuck in like 2005 or something.
Oh, yeah.
And
What
that
do you think about
seems to
this? Because I haven't seen the video for today. Philippe is saying that Paul's video today is about the Christian exploration of psychedelics.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It, I suppose. Um,
Did he speak
but
any less dismissive of it as he normally
no,
does?
no, it was much more like he was definitely exploring it. It's just one of those things where, like, the whole time I'm thinking is like, it's this exploration of like this 60s moment of
Mm-hmm.
psychedelics that is just very different from the current psychedelic um, kind of explosion that we're seeing. Like the current drug culture seems very much darker, like much more selfish. Like the guys that are, millionaires taking these ayahuasca trips, they're not doing it like the hippies were to like make a commune and be close with each other. They're doing it for like this self exploration because they don't even know who they are,
Mm-hmm.
let alone a group of people. So I just think it's very different from the 60s.
Yeah, and I would agree with that to a certain degree because I think to like the 60s, a lot of the people that would have been experiencing this kind of grew up in a different, like in a very communal environment, right?
Yeah.
So the idea of using psychedelics to form a different, there was already this implicit understanding that community was important.
Right.
And I feel like in today's world, that's not always a common assumption.
Yeah, like a big part of the hippie thing was like orgies and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
like people now can't even get a date, let alone. So it's like, it's just a very, like, you can see how some of those lessons have embedded themselves
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Like we are still a product of the 60s kind of zeitgeist.
Yeah.
But I would, even in some of these more recent conversations of like Jordan Peterson or somebody, I'm just using him as an example. On psychedelics, I feel like is just a little behind because they have to talk to the youth about it and their like actual experience, which is why some of the 60s stuff is so interesting, probably because that's what it is. People were actually going out and asking, the hippies and the young what was happening.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, for me, I've never experimented with any type of drugs, really, psychedelics or anything else. Mainly because learning, it was kind of like a reaction to my parenting. My dad was a drug addict for a long time, and so it was like, okay, well, I'm not. He learned that lesson for me.
Yeah.
But there has been a curiosity about some of those experiences that it's like, my dad would tell me stuff like we'd listen and we'd be in the car and then Zeppelin would come on. And, I'm, 12 thinking, hey, this is awesome. And my dad's like, yes, this is awesome. But it's nothing like when you listen to it on LSD. And I'm like, so you're saying I'm missing something.
Yeah.
But it's also something that you don't want me to ever experience as well. So.
Yeah, it like I have had I've done psychedelics quite a few times, and it's just I just don't find it as deep as people think. Even if you do have like these like crazy what would be a word for it? I don't know, kind of explosions in your brain. It's not gonna stick. You're thinking on acid, and so like when you come out of that, you can't remember much. I'll say this, like this is kind of a thought I've had while like experiencing trips and stuff is people kind of think that you're like going higher, but often what I think is actually happening is you're going like lower. And I've had this thought that like this is kind of what it's like to be like an animal, because you don't have like any they always talk about like the ego death, your ego goes away. And it's
Mhm.
like the ego is bashed in our modern culture, that it's like all bad. And it's like, no, it's actually kind of a good thing, because it's a really freaky world when you lose that. You really do. It's like you're becoming literally lower, like a lower being
Mhm.
or something. I know that sounds weird,
Well,
but
and it's
that's
yeah, because I'm trying to compare it to like different kinds of experiences that I have. Like I'm sure many musicians, especially musicians in more contemporary music, have experienced this where it's like you're jamming with somebody and maybe you're soloing, and then all of a sudden you kind of just let go and
mhm,
you're just kind of in this moment where you're kind of in control, but not really, but you're just kind of feeling it and flowing it.
mhm.
And I feel like that a lot of musicians want that or are seeking it. Um, it's hard to seek, but it involves quite a ton of preparedness, right? I can't just free flow and solo if I haven't been practicing my scales and modes and jamming for large periods of time. It's hard to it's hard to cheat that musically.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah,
so
it's
I
like that
would say,
unearned wisdom.
I, to a certain degree, if there's any value in a psychedelic experience, it's probably one that cannot be cheated, if that makes sense. Like I'll
Yeah.
just take this, and all of a sudden I'm going to have this amazing higher experience. Like,
Yeah, it's even like I always wonder what these shamans in the Amazon that do these ayahuasca.
oop, lost you. Practice creates a body for the muse to inhabit. Yes, I think I need to think about that quite a bit. I mean, to a certain degree, that idea is why I've become very passionate about liturgy. Just that practice and the formative aspect of it and what it prepares you for. Yeah, that's another thing is that how what I've thought about, especially in terms of church and worship, is in moments that I have felt in my life in a church service or mass where I feel a spiritual feeling, is there a difference between that and what some people have claimed in their psychedelic experiences? And I don't know the answer to that, obviously. I will share this link again in case anybody wants to jump in. Lost Cause has gotten disconnected. Hey Tayo, how's couch surfing?
Uh, Catching the waves. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I've been there before. So for about the 6 months before I went to college, I was homeless, and you know, every now and then I'd have to sleep in a car or something like that. But most of the time was couch surfing with people I would meet at a music gig or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, I too have been there before. But I thought I'll come on stream to show this lovely,
What have you?
lovely.
Father Earth's got to make that money, earn that paper. I was a guitarist mainly. Uh, as you know, I probably could jam on other instruments and have before, but my main bread and butter was guitar.
Did you play the sax as well?
No, I've never performed on the saxophone. I've taught people to play the saxophone. Saxophone is actually an easier instrument to learn. Like the beginning stages of a saxophone are relatively easy, which that's why it makes it difficult to be a professional because there's a lot of competition.
Oh.
I mean, similar with a guitar, right? I mean, it's hard to be a great guitarist these days because there have already been so many great guitarists. Person asks, what got me into music? Wow, probably my dad. My dad always wished he could be a musician because he was really into the rock and roll scene, but never learned to play anything. And so, but he would always talk about it like it was the most amazing thing ever. And when I was a kid, he bought himself a guitar to learn how to play. And we weren't allowed to touch it. Like we'd get hit if we ever touched his guitar. But my dad was hardly ever home. You know, he worked a lot. And so I started playing without getting caught. And that kind of started me along that route. And then when I was in high school, I met a girl and I thought she was hot. And she said she wanted to learn how to play the guitar. And I think at that time I hadn't even picked up a guitar in like a year. But I was like, oh, you know, I play the guitar. I could teach you. And
once again, the power of the feminine.
Yeah. I didn't work out with her, but worked out with the guitar. You ever play anything, Tayo?
Just pausing there to, you know, as the trains fly by. What did you say? Sorry.
Have you ever play an instrument or perform anything?
I took in secondary school. I wanted to learn to play the piano, but the music options we had were drums or guitar. So I chose the drums, and I did like a 12-week school where I learned to read music and whatnot, but didn't really stick to it. I was more into football than music.
I always
Hot
thought
girl
the drums would be
evangelism.
cool.
I mean, to a certain degree, it's sad to say, that's kind of like what has led me towards some of the biggest aspects of my life. The girl I thought was hot got me into guitar. A girl I thought was hot, I still think is hot, got me into liturgy. She's also my wife. Actually, she also got me into the Christian Reformed Church denomination, and now I'm a pastor in that denomination. So yeah.
Oh, you're a CRC pastor?
I am a CRC pastor. Isn't that
I
weird?
heard you were a pastor. That is weird. So Jacob
the
was
first thing I learned
out.
about the Dutch was from Goldmember. I'm from Holland. Isn't that weird? I used to say it to my wife all the time.
That's funny. Huh. So how big's your church?
My church is very small. We average maybe 15 to 20 in a week.
Wow.
So I planted the church during COVID.
Oh wow.
Which was a very difficult thing to do, especially in Chicago.
Okay, you're in Chicago?
Yeah.
I remember you saying you went to Moody Bible College.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sure. Do people go to church in Chicago?
Yeah, believe it or not. But part of the aspect was most of the Christian people I knew in my neighborhood didn't go to church in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody talks crap about wanting community. There wasn't a lot towards building that Christian community in my neighborhood. So I was like, well, maybe if I plant a church, you know, people in the community that are Christians can kind of worship together. But then COVID happened and nobody wanted to go to church anymore.
Well, I remember Paul saying, like, you should go to the nearest church to you. I was like, Paul, that's a dangerous recommendation. I got a Catholic church and a Mormon temple. Those are the closest things. I don't know.
Yeah, in over the past few years, I've become quite a bit more interested in Catholicism.
Yeah.
I often tell my wife that if something ever happened to her, I would convert and become a priest.
Yeah, I
But,
mean, I like the idea of Catholicism because it kind of feels like, I don't know. It's kind of like when I went to Anglican church. I really liked it
yeah,
because it was like, oh, this is where like all of our songs come from, huh? You know,
yeah.
like felt very at home.
Yeah, I do like the history, but I mean, yeah, it's I can find value in most traditions. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean I'm going to join all of them, but I probably could convince myself if I really wanted to. If my wife passes away and there was a hot girl in one of these, probably not the Catholic because then I couldn't become a priest. Maybe a hot guy.
That's the theme of the stream so far. The hot girl evangelism.
The hot girl evangelism. Yeah, I mean, and then it's looking like, I mean, one of the things I retroactively value about the CRC is the whole idea of the sovereignty of God and the emphasis there, because to a certain degree, I've in the CRC because of the sovereignty of God. Like there were all these things that could have happened and led me in a very different direction, but somehow I ended up here.
And in this little corner as well.
And in this little corner, I mean, even my going to Moody was kind of a wild experience. So I was actually slated to go into the Air Force. I was ready to go. It's attested and everything. And then my swearing date for the Air Force was September 11th, 2001.
Wild.
And so I couldn't swear in anymore on that date. And that radically changed my course.
You decided you didn't want to go to war?
I was going to the Air Force. If you're going to the Air Force, it's highly unlikely that you're going to war.
They call it the Chair Force.
Yeah. And so, but it was more that because the Air Force isn't as in high demand, like when even if I swore in, they told me I wouldn't leave for basic training for like a year. And I was like, well, I'm not going to swear. I'm not going to put my life on hold while I swear into the Air Force.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I got to figure out another way. And
wow.
Eventually that way led me to Moody and into my degree in guitar. Yeah. So it's weird.
It is weird.
I don't know if anyone's told you this before, Mo, but you've got like a black preacher cadence to your voice.
Well, I grew up. I grew up around a lot of black people. And a lot of people will say that like black preaching or that style, which I mean, if you ever read Time of Soul, will say that's more of like a Southern thing than it is a black thing. But a lot of that influenced hip hop.
Yeah.
They'll talk about like Tupac had a lot of that in his flow.
Yeah.
So
sure.
Part of that is that hip hop influence. I always wonder if maybe I would preach in rhyme. That would be an interesting experiment.
Epic.
That
would be epic.
There are a few hip hop albums that are like that. That comes to mind. Preaching.
Like which one? Any in particular?
Stephen the Levite's album comes to mind. Anything from Lamp Mode Recordings.
Okay, yeah. I do often lament that I never did the military. Because I feel like I'm really undisciplined. Like it's hard. I'm not much of always a self-starter in terms of some of my like personal disciplines, exercise, cleaning my room, which Jordan Peterson always makes me feel bad about. I'm like, man, if I had gotten into the military, I'd probably have some better habits.
Yeah, I was about to go into the military right after high school, and then I reconsidered joining after I dropped out of community college, and I was like, already like, I'm too old for this. Like, I don't know. If you don't join like right fresh out of high school, it just feels like eh. But I had a lot of buddies, a lot of friends that went to the military, and they're doing very well.
Yeah, I could use some more discipline.
Yeah. Oh well.
Same here.
Oh well.
For the past year, I've been taking karate classes with my kids. So I'm like
You
this
get to beat them up.
one of the few grown men in this karate class. Like I enjoy what I'm learning, but it feels so awkward.
Yeah. Do you get to drop kick any of the kids?
No, not yet.
It's that,
Yeah.
you have to awkwardly explain to other parents, I've got a kid here, I'm not just a weird old man, you know.
Yeah.
Yep, in this class.
But yeah, it's still weird. Like because one of the funniest stories, in my opinion, of my karate class experience is we were doing what they call step sparring, where it's like you practice your punch and they practice the block, but it's prepared ahead of time. So the only person in that class that day was this like 13-year-old girl that was close to my height. So she was the only one I could really spar with or do that step sparring with. And this was during the summer, and the dojo didn't have air conditioning. So I'm like, man, I am this girl's worst nightmare. This giant 6'3", sweaty old man that she has to make physical contact with. And I was like, oh man. So in my head, I'm like, this is awful. I feel awful right now. Never saw her again. She never came back.
That was my next question. If she came back.
No, never again.
Understandably so.
Yeah, the senseis say that she had gotten injured. But I'm not sure I believe that. I think
just imagine her going home and telling her parents, "Yeah, I had to spar an old man today."
Yeah, I had to endure that awkwardness.
There you go.
Uh-oh. Somebody's got Weeks' phone number. You should post it. Do you guys have CW Weeks' phone number?
No. I found Jacob said his phone number was easy to find, so I found his.
Oh, nice.
And I got it.
I suspect my phone number would be easy to find, but I rarely ever answer my phone anymore.
If you just look up Jacob's name on Google, like he said, it's right there.
I'm looking at my name to see if my phone number comes up.
I watched this thing like a while ago, and it was like a cybersecurity expert guy.
Yeah.
And he was saying that like your phone number nowadays should really be like your social security number, because he did like a presentation to these guys doing a podcast, and he, off of just their phone number, he found like all of his family's phone numbers, obviously, but he found like all of his family's social security numbers, bank account stuff, like just everything off of just one phone number.
Well,
it scared the crap out of me.
Well, I just found my phone number online real fast.
Yep. I don't know if we get too deep into infiltrating these institutions, we're gonna have to have a cybersecurity division soon.
That'll be interesting. Yeah, I don't know much about cybersecurity. I just feel like I've never been interesting enough for people to look into my personal information. I don't really have any money to steal. Don't really have great credit.
Well, nowadays they'll just hack your account for a account name and like ransom it if they just like your account name.
Yeah,
that's like a really common thing.
Wonder if Jacob's actually done this before.
Yeah, maybe. That's a very specific number to just.
I mean, he seems
Don't
really
dox me,
familiar
bro.
with this.
Yes, he does.
I mean, I found out Jacob was involved in building a militia the other day, so
Mhm.
does not surprise me.
My wife is often concerned that people can find out where I live and might come over here. And I'm like, honey, if people find out where I live, they're probably not going to want to come here. I mean, I tell people where I live and that they should move here all the time, and they still won't come here.
Like, where do you live? Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I have friends that won't come over to visit me.
Well, and we've had a surprising lack of crazies in this corner. I don't know.
You think?
I would say so. You know, I mean, there's some crazies, but not crazy enough to like show up at your house. Could be wrong.
This is pretty nuts. Friend's father transferred a house to his girlfriend 2 years before the divorce. Woo! That's shady.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering who qualifies as the crazy.
Paul probably for starting all of this.
Yeah, 100%.
I feel like Paul would gladly take on that label.
Yeah.
Has anybody done this?
Yeah, I think there's been a few incidents of that.
Oh gosh.
I have not experienced that yet.
I feel like Jacob's threatening in the comments.
Showing up to many people's houses. I wonder, Jacob, would you ever show up to my house?
That's a challenge there.
Yeah, that would be that would be super interesting. I wouldn't mind. PW has shown up to my house.
Yeah, we ought to have more people get together at people's houses, probably.
He was invited, but not on the day that he showed up.
It was super heavy.
Father Eric showing some wisdom.
Where is Jacob right now? Is Jacob still on the road?
No, he's back, I
He's
think.
back at home, right?
I believe so.
How do you remember it, CW? Or how do you remember it? I remember you telling me you were going to come at one time, and then I get a text, hey, I'm in front of your house. Or that's how I remember it. Two miles south of UCLA.
Oh, drop in, go say hello to Andrew.
Yeah, go see Andrew.
Two miles south of UCLA. Jacob's living good. Maybe.
Are any of you guys going to Chino?
Yeah, I'm gonna be there.
Nice.
It's kind of
Are
a
you gonna
crazy. It's kind of a crazy like thing how it all worked out because I was living out in Los Angeles. I don't know, last summer. Yeah, kind of last spring, summer. And I started going to an Orthodox church out there, St. Andrews, the one that Jonathan Peugeot is going to be giving a tour of. So I'm like I was like, whoa, what a crazy, weird coming together of everything. So they have a house there. I call it like Ortho Bro Manor, where it's like 5 guys that all kind of live there, kind of like right off the church. So I'll probably be staying there. So yeah, really crazy. I'm super excited.
I plan to be doing the tent camping.
Yeah, I thought about that, but I was like, yeah, I wanted to get the tickets right then and there. And I was like, even an extra $60. I was like, nah, I'll get free lodging.
Yeah, I haven't tent camped since I was dating my wife, and I only went because she invited me because she wanted some of her friends to meet me. And
I mean,
it was awkward.
tent camping in Chino, California didn't sound too seductive to me, so I was like, I'll be okay if I miss it. I didn't even know there were
synagogue with Jacob.
That would be interesting.
So Protestants use hot girls for evangelism. In Judaism, they use Jacob.
Well, if at that rate, Protestants will win.
You don't think Jacob's hot? How far will this conversation devolve from here?
Yeah, what's going on? Take you guys on an adventure. No, I'm like super excited for the event.
Are you on stream at the same time every day, or is there a schedule, or is it just sporadic?
I don't know. Because of what it's the 19th, 20th, and main stuff is on the 19th and 20th. I know that the tickets include the meals. Like it says on the 19th, it includes lunch and dinner, and includes breakfast, lunch, and dinner on the 20th. So I would imagine that a lot of it is taking place in the same place.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna make it for the paintball stuff, but I was thinking about still going to the dinner afterwards because I heard that was an open option.
Yeah, I'm probably not gonna do the paintball.
PB&J.
I have no interest in getting shot, even with paintball guns.
Basting.
Yeah, I went paintballing once in my life, and I don't think I hit anybody, but I got hit a lot. And so, no thanks.
I feel sorry for Paul and all of the other Giants because easy target.
Yeah. Paul's got a couple inches on me, but I think I'm right. I went paintballing with a bunch of other Puerto Ricans, and I'm not. My height isn't very common amongst Puerto Ricans, so I was an easy target.
I would have the advantage. I'd be sneaking around.
As would I.
And I'm not going paintballing with you guys for sure.
I've actually never been paintballing. We always grew up doing like airsoft guns and shooting each other in the face with those.
Fun.
It sounded cool, but
yeah, but it cost money. That's why I never did it. We played with things that were free.
Oh, we've lost goals.
Yeah. Every time he goes to certain parts of the building, I think he loses the connection. It was fine, CW. Actually, it's one of those things where, like, nowadays, because of technology, right, people always overly announce themselves. The comedian, Sebastian Maniscalco, I think is how you say his last name. he has this bit that he talks about like company, right? And like when you were a kid 20 years ago, you hear a knock at the door and it's like, ooh, who stopped by, you know? Unannounced, because most people that stopped by, it was kind of unannounced. And now it's like somebody knocks at the door and you're like, get down. So I was happy that CW came relatively unannounced. It was refreshing.
Yeah, growing up in Niger, there's a saying that if you're in the neighborhood, you have to stop by, otherwise it's disrespectful. So unannounced guest is the norm where I grew up.
Yeah, and you always had to be ready. You always had to have a certain amount of food ready for people to come over.
Yeah, that's why every day there's chores to do, because you never know who's going to show up. The place has to be clean.
Classic game. Hit the telephone pole with a rock. Did anybody else play crate ball? Where, we didn't always have, like, the park near where I grew up, the basketball rims had been stolen off of the backboards. So there were no rims. So what we would do is we would we'll nail a crate. We'll cut a hole in the bottom of the crate, nail it to a telephone pole, and we'd play basketball.
Ghetto basketball.
Yeah.
No, but there was a lot of playing football with anything, cans, whatever you can find. Yeah. That's the ball. You make the goals with bags, tires.
The crate ball was extremely helpful for my jump shot, because the grates are smaller than the basketball rim. So if you get good at getting into the crate, well, getting it through the rim, that's pretty easy. Basketball was a lot more common where I'm at than football, or as us Americans say, soccer.
Ugh, soccer.
Yeah, I didn't do a whole lot of football when I was growing up.
To be fair, you're 6 foot plus. It would be disrespectful if you didn't play basketball.
Yeah, no, I had to play basketball, especially because I was so tall, Yeah. I mean, not compared to other basketball players, but compared to other Puerto Ricans.
So growing up, you was the Shaq of your neighborhood.
Yeah. I was like, you had to play, It's one of the things where the Dutch, like Paul's really tall. A lot of these Dutch guys are so tall. I'm like, you all need to be playing basketball like all the time.
Yeah, they're really good at soccer, football, but I think that's their thing.
Yeah, but they're so tall.
Yeah, that's true. That's a fair point.
Yeah, I had dreams of going to the NBA when I was a kid. Like, they got killed real fast.
Who's your team? I'm in Chicago, so I'm guessing Bulls.
Yeah, I don't really follow sports anymore. It's kind of depressing going from the 90s to after the 90s. And so, yeah, and then I also get too emotionally vested in sports. Like when the Bulls started to lose, like it would ruin my day if the Bulls lost a game. I used to get into UFC as well. Used to watch a lot of those fights. And if I was rooting for somebody and they lost, I would be angry for like a couple of days. And I was like, okay, I can't keep doing this to myself.
Yeah, it's really strange. I'm the same. Well, I was the same. But now I'm at a place where if Chelsea are winning, that's my football club. If we're winning, I'm involved. But as soon as things start to go sideways, I just completely disconnect. I can't. I'm not paying attention. I switch sports. I'll go from watching paying attention to basketball and whatever. So
yeah, definitely more of a fair weather fan. I mean, with the Cubs, you know, in 2003, you know, when the Cubs were like in the conference finals and they were up 3-0, and or 3-0, 3-1, and it was game 4, and they were up 8-2. I jumped on the red line train and I took it down to Wrigley so I could be part of the celebration. And then by the time I got to Wrigley, it was like tied. And then they ended up losing that game, and the next game, and the next game. That hurt.
Yeah. Sport can be heartbreaking.
Yeah, so I avoid it. So yeah, I don't follow any of the really Chicago teams anymore. And the Chicago teams are the ones that I was obviously fond of. Even the Sox, Cubs, Sox, Bears. But yeah, I just don't anymore.
I always had friends that were like really into sports, and I never was. So I was always the odd one out. Like they would be like, "Oh, have you seen that?" And they're like naming 50 names at like 50 miles per hour, and I'm like, I don't know. Could just never get into it.
I did watch enough sports, and that like I can still keep up in a conversation with people, and hold my own. But I'm definitely that guy that's quiet in the conversation for most of it.
Yeah, I've wasted days, weeks, probably a year or a couple of years of my life talking about sports in as passionately as the managers and the players playing it, and having no impact on the sport ever. But I
remember like in the 2000s when like the mixed martial arts was becoming a thing. You know, I would go to like the mixed martial arts gyms and like practice boxing with people and wrestling, because I used to wrestle in high school. And so I was really into it. I would watch everyone, but I was never going to be a professional. So it's like, why was I in it that much? And then I would get so angry when my guys would lose. It was just like, it was creating more difficulty in my life than anything rewarding.
I always found it funny how people are like, we are gonna, you know, I was just like, what do you mean, dude? You're watching it on the TV.
I think it's the spirit, like sports, like Father Eric said, is a religion, and when you're participating in it, it's a we thing.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
I mean, because I could see the same patterns within churches, right? There's people that are part of churches that don't do anything to contribute to that church's success at all, except for show up, maybe tithe every now and then. But they would think of it, our church, we are doing this, and we, you know, there is a part of a spiritual connection.
Yeah. They have the literally right next to me. They have like they're hosting the Big 12 tournament at this arena, and it was just interesting. It caught my eye. There's like a band / spirit squad entrance. That's what they call them. And that just, I don't know. I was like, oh, how interesting. Spiritual.
And each element like really gets into it. Like, you know, you have your marching band, right?
Yeah.
Those marching band people get really intense about marching band.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's that really threw me off. Because I had always thought of like marching band, well, this is just the band, you know, musicians that like playing and then they march. It's like, no, they get real hardcore, man. I used to be a high school concert band director, but I can't hold my own with the marchers. So, you know, if I tried, they would just make fun of me.
Yeah. Yeah, people would like mess with our high school marching band And they were feisty, dude. They'll smack you with a trumpet or something if you were like messing with them too much.
Yeah.
Seriously, like it was so funny. This kid, it was like an assembly, and he like put his head in his trumpet, like trying to mess with him, and he just went pow and hit him with his trumpet, and he like started rolling down the bleachers.
I mean,
Like, oh
if
shit.
you put your head on a man's trumpet, what do you expect?
Uh-huh.
And
It's
it's
a
true.
violation.
And you know, it takes quite a bit of physical energy. I mean, to do the marching and then the play. You know, if you're playing a horn, the breathing that's involved, and also marching. I mean, can't really be a slouch.
Some of those drum, I don't know what they're called, but it's like the drum section or whatever. They'll do like
Drumline,
a specific. Yeah. That stuff is actually pretty impressive.
Have any of you ever seen the Roots play live?
I've never seen them live.
I wish.
So I was with one of my bands. We opened up for them,
Oh wow.
and this is when I knew. This is when I found out that they were on a whole different level than I was. You know, they have this guy that plays the sousaphone. You know, that big tuba that wraps around him,
Uh-huh.
and he's rocking it out, just going ham on the sousaphone for a 2-hour set. And I'm like, how do you have that stamina?
Yeah.
It's a lung
Nutty.
capacity needed.
And I could have at the time, you know, I was, you know, a lot of musicians, you start in your early 20s and you get all those touring habits. So I think I opened up for the Roots. I was like 27, 28. So I would like to say, well, maybe I'm just too old for this at that time, but they were a lot older than I was. And the fact that they could still do that kind of stuff, I was like, wow.
Yep. How did you make that connection? How did you meet these guys?
So it was more a connection with the show producer.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, you know, for all these concerts, there's somebody putting on the show. You know, there's a tour producer or whatever.
Right.
And then when they end up in a city, they're looking for opening acts, and sometimes it's to conserve money. You know, they'll look for local groups that are cheap.
Right. That makes sense.
And you know, when you're with the band, you're constantly selling or sending your press kit to different people everywhere, all the local venues, whoever will give an ear. And so I made a connection with the person putting on this show. It was kind of it was a fundraising show. I forget for what. And there were 2 opening acts, and we got to be one of them. It's enough pressure to be opening up for the Roots, but the first opening act got booed off the stage that day.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, they
How
sucked,
was that?
but it was one of those things. Well, it's like, well, do we suck? Like,
Yeah.
we were like terrified.
Yeah.
We didn't get booed off the stage, but we also didn't get discovered at that show either.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things where at that point there was a significant difference between the show that we put on and the show that the Roots put on.
Yeah. Well, oh goodness. Doing a little arts and crafts here for the live stream.
It looks beautiful.
It's gonna look good. It looks rough right now. They duct taped a bunch of cotton balls to the ceiling to make a cloud. And now I have to fix it because they took it down.
Gavin, do we suck? This is a question every artist ought to ask themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you watch those first episodes of American Idol, and you're like, how do these people not know that they suck? Because they don't want to know that they suck. Usually, they're terrified to ask that question, terrified to get the response. Because everybody that's good sucked at one point. At least, well, maybe not everybody, but most. And you got to get past that sucky phase. And that's not easy to get past. You know, a lot of people have told me when I meet them that I should do stand-up. And I won't, because I don't want to get through that sucky phase. It would destroy me.
Stand up.
Yeah, I mean, the pressure of being in front of people and then you're supposed to make them laugh. Whew.
Yeah, I always find it's much easier to be funny when it's just natural. You know, it's like when somebody asks you to, like, oh, you got to tell that joke to him or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I can't just do this on command, dude. It's not the same.
So I've actually done a couple of shows where I came up right after somebody got booed off the stage, and was stressed because, you know, that question. One of my earliest shows is I played with a group. It was me, a singer, and then her boyfriend was a beatboxer. So I played guitar, he beatboxed, and she sang over what we put together. And we played at Northwestern. They had an Apollo-style talent competition. And so Apollo-style is you do get booed off the stage. And the group that went on before us got booed off the stage. And our performance started with the singer, who was a little bit sick that day. And as she started to sing, they started to boo. And we were like, oh no, we're going to get booed off before we even get to come in. But then she stayed on long enough that the beatboxer and me on the guitar joined in, and then the booing stopped. And that felt really good. But we came close. Hey, Chad, how you doing today? Still working on that shower?
I saw his video he posted. I think it's mostly done.
I saw that he posted a video. I haven't looked at it yet.
Yeah. It was just like a short of like the...
Yeah, I saw it when I was posting the link on the Discord of this video. Or this stream.
Chad, do you have any thoughts about psychedelics and Christianity? Can you find Jesus on ayahuasca?
Finding Jesus on ayahuasca. That could be a book title.
I'm sure there's something out there that's quite similar. I'm sure
I'm
somebody's written something like that.
Googling it right now. It would help if I spelled it correctly.
Well, it's not a usual word to spell.
Yeah, there's some interesting titles.
It's terrible.
Jesus can find you anywhere.
That's a good point.
Chad says, I think if you typically are looking, you might not find him where you want.
Yeah, you know, I've heard stories of guys that are like literally in the middle of a overdose, you know, and it's like they have a very, like they think they probably were going to die, and you know they've had some crazy stuff where they, you know, like literally see Jesus or an angel like saving them. They kind of wake up. Something I've heard stories like that, but it's like they weren't seeking it, you know. They weren't smoking meth to find Jesus. It's like he saved them from dying.
Yeah.
So it's like the idea of like the hippies, you know, taking acid to find Jesus. I mean, even Paul gets into it. Is like eventually down the line they decided, you know what, this might be separating us from Christ.
Well, I think there's a lot like a lot of people. For a lot of people, there's this subconscious idea that God has no agency. Like, if I do this, I will have the encounter with God. And to a certain degree, it's like, well, God makes that decision on who he decides he will have an encounter with. Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of, I'm saying that off the top of my head. Probably should think through that a bit more.
But I know what you mean. Like, I think a lot of people literally have the idea that God is like, I don't know, some sort of ultimate AI running the universe as a simulation. And so it's just like, if you, I'm not a computer guy, but, you know, if you just do the right things, the code will respond in this way, like a formula almost.
Howdy, Gavin.
If you say the word psychedelics 3 times, I'll show up.
Okay.
Enlighten us.
They're dangerous, but I mean, everything's dangerous.
Yeah. Are they worth it?
Are they worth it? I mean, I don't think everyone would benefit from them. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah. I listened to Pastor Paul's sermon from last Sunday, and I clipped the one part of it that Grimgray showed, and it said, I think he said something like, crack and heroin are amazing. And right after that, he says the first time you use them. But I've heard, I've never done crack or heroin, by the way, and I don't advise it. But you know, heroin's like, that's part of the opium plant is used in medicine. Like, I would say that these things need to be connected to a goal of trying to improve your well-being, right, in general. But yeah, I think Gabor Mate, he mentions how people who are abused, they go through life and they've never even experienced a normal level of joy or happiness, and so they then do something like heroin, and they then are enlightened to an experience that is a potential that people in a normal, healthy environment have enjoyed all the time, and it's so good, they don't know how to get it any other way. It gives me goosebumps. I mean, so it's really powerful. It's also really dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that idea, I mean, to a certain degree, I think so far, and based on my lack of knowledge of these things, I'm probably in the same space. Like, this can have potential to help some people. But there has to be, well, one, you just can't assume that it's helpful for everybody. And that it could be very destructive for some, if not many.
Yeah.
But that takes study to try to figure that out. And during that study, you're probably going to screw some things up.
Well, and then there's that, to me, that brings the question back to, well, what's the right way to do study, which is even a bigger topic. And then I just wanted to point out, I guess you may have heard about studies where a rat will sit there and just do cocaine, right? Or, I think there's a similar study that will take a rat that has had a good life and they won't get addicted to the cocaine, right? So it's kind of something I think it's good to remember that kind of thing. So,
well, and psychedelics are very different from like heroin and cocaine. Like, those aren't going to give you spiritual, well, I mean, that's not true, but
they call the alcohol spirits.
Right, but it's definitely a different thing.
It is
like
different.
that stuff is like just a high, whereas like a psychedelic trip is just, you know, you don't crave it the next day, or like, you know, I don't know. That's like a hard drug. Psychedelics are definitely very different.
Yeah. Well, the I don't know. Have you done the psychedelics lost cause?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've never done LSD, but I did psilocybin. So, you know,
Yeah, I mean,
even
LSD
psilocybin and LSD might be different, right?
they're definitely different.
Right.
Like in intensity, I would not recommend LSD to anybody.
Yeah.
Even though I've had good, you know, good times or whatever on it, but that's all it is. Really, is it's like it's a good time at best. You know, I know a lot of guys that have done a lot of that stuff, and it's one of those things where you'll know them by their fruits. They're mostly kind of stupid, and they're not really doing anything spiritual with their lives now.
But I actually had a recording today about mindset. And so so right now, this is a mind altering experience. Welcome to the mind altering experience. And then the mindset is, are you here to learn and grow? Right. And so I always tried to, and I say always, not always, but often try to enter with the mindset of, okay, I'm about to learn and grow, which is different than the mindset of, let's get messed up and have fun. You know, that's two different mindsets.
Or let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens. I mean, I don't even know what mine. I don't know if I even did that. It was sometimes I just want to fit in, you know, something like that. I don't know if I did a let's see what happens.
So I feel like to a certain degree, like in my experience with friends that like to party or drink, sometimes the drugs are involved with weed and other things, but a lot of times the drinking, I'm curious as to what will happen when we put alcohol into the mix. Once we shut off our inhibitions, what are the things that we will do?
I know one thing. It's hard to say no once you've turned off your inhibitions.
Yeah. And so, and for people that always say no, right? Like that, they're always terrified to do things. A lot of times they're, you know, they want that. I want to finally be able to say yes to something. And so let's take the shot and see what I'll say yes to.
It's dangerous. Saying yes to everything is dangerous.
Yeah. But so is saying yes to nothing, right?
It is.
Because I've had that before. I used to tell people, you know, when I was very young, being socially awkward, like I would want people to come talk to me. And then sometimes people would come talk to me and then I would like shoo them away real fast because I didn't know how to respond to them talking to me. And then I'd like kick myself in the butt, like, oh, that was your opportunity to talk to that person. Or dancing, like, right? I'd be at a dance and I'm like, I really want to dance with somebody. Somebody would come up and ask me to dance. I'm like, no, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I really wanted to do that.
I remember alcohol helping me dance.
Well, I think about some of these things. You know, Chad said it's the chemical isn't wrong, it's the person or the motive. I don't agree with that. It's kind of like after the fall, how God says there's going to be thorns now. And this idea that like everything is good just in the right setting or right context or right mindset, I think is misleading. It's like I don't think there's going to be good mosquitoes or good leeches in the life to come. I actually think they probably won't be there. Like there might just be things that God makes to be bad.
Yeah, I've been wondering asking this question. I think Luke Thompson, we had a disagreement. And it's like, and I asked, are there actual tools that are inherently bad? And so, yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, that there would be no mosquitoes or slugs. Like you don't see a purpose for them in the ideal world, the ideal situation.
Yeah,
that's a bold statement now.
I don't mind that it's a bold statement, but it's like it's like pornography. You could take that like really extreme. But it's like, are there positive uses in the right context with the right motive with that? Probably not. My hunch is no.
Yeah, I tried to distinguish between the tool and the content, right? So that you can use pornography can then expand an industry like the internet, and so the internet is the tool, but the content on it, the pornography, might not be that good, right? So
Yeah. It's interesting. I actually had this conversation maybe 15 years ago with a young woman that ran a sex shop. I met her at a festival, and at the time I was a sex ed teacher. And so for her, or at least what she tried to communicate to me, was that pornography was actually a good thing because there were so many people that were sexually suppressed and didn't know how to engage with their partners, even if they were married. And I'm not saying that I agree with her, but like I feel like to say like pornography is just a bad thing, that does involve, you have to come from a moral framework, and obviously she didn't have that same moral framework.
Well, pornography is just a word, right? So if I get naked and go walk outside the house and go jogging down the street, is that pornography, right? There's all these escalations along that path.
Yeah. You have to unpack like what qualifies. So let's say if we define pornography as engaging in sexual activity on camera, could we think
I wouldn't even say that that's pornography. It's like you can get a good definition of it when you look at stuff like they have on Instagram where it's like food porn. There's nothing wrong with having a cooking show, right? But it's the way that it's presented, unrealistic, over the top.
Okay.
Like you can define it. It's not that like Gavin running down the street naked obviously would not be pornography.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't think that qualifies as porn.
Hey, your wives might not. If your wives were watching, you might not like that.
But I still wouldn't qualify it as pornography.
I think I was just thinking that I've heard someone say you'll know it when you see it. The thing is my point is that it's going to be different for each person. I think that was my point. So you can define it, and someone else will define it a different way. And so, but in that spirit of like you talk to the sex worker, or not sex worker, the sex store owner or worker at a sex store, I don't see there being a problem with learning how to have sex properly, right? That would be different than something, and it would get back to like psychedelics. Like when I was saying, it's like, are you doing it? Let's just have fun, or are we doing it for are we going to grow and become better people together?
Yeah.
So there's different motivations and mindsets going into each thing.
And then it's also like we are in a fallen world. So to a certain degree, we have to navigate the fallen world. I mean, for example, like top 3 reasons marriages end. Top 3 reasons are money, in-laws, and sex. So sex is a big one. So how do you deal with that? Look, and how do you encourage couples to deal with that? It's a difficult question. I'm not trying to say that I have the answers to these questions, but it's like, if we want marriages to continue to succeed, well, that is something that has to be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And part of the reason it's part of the conversation is because the fallen world has put sex everywhere. And that's something that people who want to remain monogamous have to wrestle with. Like men are biologically are sexually stimulated, constantly outside of their homes. What do you do with that?
If you were in a nudist community, I think the stimulation would be different. Like one experience would be different. Like if you lived in a community where all women were covered, an ankle might turn you on. So
I experienced that at Moody. So when I went to Bible school, I come from a culture where women show a lot of skin. They wear very tight clothing. It's very common. And so to a certain degree, I was a little bit desensitized to that. But then I would, I was at Moody, and then, a cousin would call, hey, we're going to the movies. You should come. I'm like, okay. And I'd invite a guy that I was a friend in Bible school with, and he'd come with me. And then afterwards, he's talking about how he's struggling with impure thoughts about my cousins or close friends. And I was like, what is wrong with you? But part of it was that he was a lot more sensitive to certain stimulation than I was.
Yeah,
and so, that complicates things.
Yeah. And I'm allergic to poison ivy, and some people aren't.
Yeah. Yeah, those are always interesting to think about, because the more you remove these things, like let's say we got rid of porn, period.
Even though we can't define it.
Even though we can't define it, right? Well, we would probably start calling other things porn, right? Because to a certain degree, like if you look at the difference between pornography now and pornography like 20 years ago, or even when the internet first came about, there's a big difference in the content. There was an interview with Larry Flint in like the early 2000s. Larry Flint is the guy that started Penthouse, where he said the kinds of pornography that is allowed now, I would have never imagined when I got started. And so that progression, that evolution, it's interesting to ponder.
Yeah. You can, things can become normalized.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then when you take things that become normalized for one culture or subculture, and then you try to mix two different cultures together who have different things having been normalized, you end up with a challenging situation. That's why you mentioned the three things that ruin marriages. One of them, you said in-laws. I think I think that's part of it, is different normalized things,
Yeah. And I've seen a lot, in my own marriage, because I'm in a cross-cultural marriage. And so having to really figure out and learn to understand, I have to understand my wife, but part of understanding her was I have to stop and understand my in-laws, and not just keep them relegated to Canada, but be able to understand them in a way that I can tolerate them, so that my wife can continue having a relationship with her parents.
The word tolerate.
Yeah. And because a lot
that's
of
a little bit different than
I didn't marry my in-laws.
Well, there is this idea of loving your enemy, and I wonder if tolerating your enemy is different than loving your enemy.
Well, I think there's a difference, but I do think it might be the gateway.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, for sure, it's the gateway.
Yeah, at first you tolerate them, and then after spending enough time, a love relationship kind of forms. But yeah, I had to learn that that her parents, to a certain degree, have to be important to me because she's important to me, and her parents are important to her. And so I had to learn that if I had met her parents without her, it would be easy just say, yeah, these are people that are different. I don't want to spend time with these people. But because I'm married to their daughter, who helped form her, it's like I have to allow them in to a certain extent.
Right.
And then that also affected how we view money, because I grew up poor, in a very urban environment. And so my ability to use money wasn't there, but also my attachment to money wasn't there either. And so, well, how do you build up your financial capacity without building an attachment to it?
Yeah, and then there's the normalizations. So you could go into a normalized culture where, for example, maybe cannabis and these kinds of things are normalized, and maybe even respected and revered as medicine or whatnot. And then the question would be, what's the ideal? Because it seems like everybody, the ones that the people that are most difficult to get along with are the ones who think they have the ideal, they know the ideal, and if you have an idea what the ideal is that's different, I'm not even going to consider it. That's the hardest people to get along with.
Yeah. Yeah, figuring out the ideal is a tricky part. To a certain degree, that's where religion helps. Like Christ being the the highest ideal. That's what we're striving to. And it, like I would say with me and my wife, at least that's our common ideal. We at least agree on that and are striving for that. And many of our discussions are trying to figure out what that means.
I think my wife and I, our ideal is something that has been negotiated since she was 14 or 15 years old, and I was like 17 years old. So we didn't have that like you have with your wife.
Mm-hmm. How are you guys? Are you in a cross-cultural marriage, or is it?
Well, she came from. I mean, her father was a podiatrist, and had relatively much more money than my father, who was a bohemian who did not work 40 hours a week, did construction, and preferred to fish and hunt, and made less than $30,000 a year. Right. So it's totally different cultures. And I had just a father, and she had a mother and a father.
Okay, yeah.
So like very different cultures. I think maybe even alcohol was a big part of our initial relationship. Like that was one thing. Like my dad did alcohol, our parents did alcohol, me and her did alcohol, but that kind of stuff changed when we had children. Alcohol became a lot less important.
It's amazing what becomes less important when you have kids.
It's amazing. Having children really changes you. Becoming a father.
And it's interesting. I've been thinking about that a lot because so many people are like, well, why don't guilt me into having kids? Like you keep putting pressure on me, like, and through a guilt aspect. And I'm like, for me, it's not necessarily the guilt. It's that there is so much understanding, a way of seeing the world that changed for me when I became a father.
It's a mind-altering experience, and it's psychedelic.
There you go, right?
It's ridiculously psychedelic.
Children are the true psychedelic.
I mean, oh man, it was one of the most impressive dreams I ever had. It was the feeling of unconditional love that I never experienced again until I got to hold my firstborn. It was like, and it's kind of like the person who just was abused and did heroin. The dream gave me the taste of the heroin, which is like holding your firstborn. And then I recognized it once I actually held my firstborn years later. It was crazy.
Are you getting this, Andrew?
Yep.
You need to have kids.
Okay.
Gotta find a trad wife first.
Trad wife.
Well, that's the harder part.
Well, having kids and making kids is the fun part. It's the being a father part and then the husband part. That's the hard part.
Yeah. Very true.
I'm sure it'll be very rewarding.
You have to. I guess what I try to learn from the experiences. It's not all enjoyable, but I try to learn from my children and our interactions. Andrew, I've never met you.
Oh, hello.
Hello. How are you?
Name?
I'm Gavin.
Andrew.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
You on your way to class?
I'm getting breakfast right now.
Oh, nice. It's 9:40 where you're at, huh?
Yep.
So what time does everybody wake up in the morning?
Depends. Today I don't have any morning classes, so I'm chilling. Had a midterm yesterday too, so I've been sleeping in.
I understand that.
Damn, midterm season already.
Yep. It's actually a bit late. I've got finals in like 2 weeks, so
Dang.
crazy. Yeah. Are you painting your house, apartment?
No, I'm painting a big office building. It's kind of an odd building where they like rent out office space. So I've been working here for quite a few weeks because it's a kind of wealthy area where they just kind of, all right, we're just going to add this and add this and add this. So good for me.
Yep.
Yeah. much better than what I have been doing the past few weeks, which was painting parking garage stairwells and like doing the base on them. And I literally would have these homeless people like pee on my base when I set it there. I was like, dude, help me out.
Andrew, what do you think about psychedelics?
I mean, I don't take it. I think spiritual experiences are mediated for a reason, you know. Like, I do not have whatever visions and shit, and that's a good thing. I know a lot of people who take psychedelics go absolutely nuts because they have that sort of stuff and then they can't integrate it into their lives. So this sort of like shocking yourself into a spiritual experience is not always a good thing. Yeah.
I have found more and more like younger people, maybe like a couple, I don't know, classes younger than me, are much more resistant to the psychedelic drug culture. They've kind of seen their older peers and older brothers go through that stuff and come out not interested because the fruits are just not there. It's like if you look at like at the end of Paul's video where he's talking about kind of the state of the streets of San Francisco by the end of or kind of by the 70s into the 60s. It's not all peace and love, you know, there's assaults, robberies all the time. But they can be a fun time, you know, they can be a fun time. And they can teach you a lot of stuff about yourself. You know, I've learned things, I suppose. But it's like, how useful is what I've learned if I can't really explain it, you know?
I mean, I don't know. I don't always think that explaining is necessary. Some things are just experiential.
Yeah, that's true. I
It's
would
like
agree with that.
you can't explain beauty, you know? Like beauty but a lot of my like roommates and whatnot, they're I mean, you can tell they're a bit cautious about it, but they're also a bit curious.
Mm-hmm.
Like they say, like they wouldn't take LSD, but maybe like shrooms or something, you know?
I've heard that a lot.
Yeah. Or cannabis is kind of the rage. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the phrase, like, just to show how far the culture is like the phrase California sober, where it's like, you just smoke weed. That's like a common phrase that I've heard. Peace.
Well, if you want
To me,
someone to talk good about it, I'll do it. But I'll let you keep going.
well, to me, I was gonna say the more interesting stuff that I've never done, and I don't know, I might be too afraid to ever do it, is like the DMT stuff. That stuff seems almost different from the classic psychedelics. Like that's a little mind blowing. Where it's like, you know, you're like actually going somewhere else, and people have talked about like actually speaking with other beings. Like that stuff is super weird to me.
I mean, it's all weird. I mean, even like
Sure, yeah.
breathing. I mean, breathing in the air is quite weird, but we do take a lot of things for granted.
Mhm.
Like like these plants are basically pooping out the stuff that we breathe in. You know, that's part of the reason why I actually treat like plants and nature as being very sacred. I'm kind of a pagan. Um, like
I get down with that.
I trust that more than I trust words and ideas and thoughts. Um, so yeah, that's my tradition and my background. But like I don't think Andrew is here. Like first thing I said about these things is it's dangerous and it's not for everybody. So like I don't want to encourage everyone to go do it.
Yeah. One of the most interesting things I heard, like because I'm always curious about like kind of the pagan worldview, just because I feel like it's very misconstrued sometimes. It's kind of thrown in with new agey stuff too much. Someone was saying at an estuary group that they had either read something or heard something on the topic, that the way that they saw the world was like the tree, like things were looking back at them, and like they were always being watched by these objects that we think of as like inanimate. And I don't know. I think that's a really cool notion because you could actually, I feel like, live very virtuously if you realized that, like, you know, your tools are looking at you in a way, like how you use them is they're kind of judging you in some sort of way. And I think it's just interesting to me because as a child you kind of inherently have that. I don't know if you've ever had like weird I've had like weird experiences where it's like you do something messed up or whatever, and you like look at like your stuffed animal and you're like, damn, you just watched me do that, you know, like as a
Yep.
little kid.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of truth there.
And like, you know, those pegs, right, or something, you put like the triangle into the whatever triangle shaped hole and whatnot, you know.
Yeah.
Like I'd always get upset when like people tried putting the triangle into the square shaped hole. Like, you know, what are you doing? And then the worst part was sometimes it fit, you know, like they didn't design it well enough for the triangle not to fit into the square shaped hole. And I was like, oh my gosh, these idiots, they're getting away with everything.
Right.
I was a menace in whatever preschool though. I'm told I headbutt people. One of them I remember, there was this lady, or Hannah, who was like playing in the sandbox, making like a little sandcastle or something, and that just set me off. I was like, no, it's my sandbox.
You're one of those.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is I think that's contagious. I think I experienced the bullying, and then I became a bully. It's like it's weird. I think it transfers. It's I don't know.
Bobovis says, I hope my toilet is I hope my toilet is unconscious when I use it.
If the toilet might breathe it all in the same way we breathe in the air, you might really enjoy it. I mean, that's we all like we're all different, and all the animals are different. It's like what motivates all living creatures to do what the creatures do is so the thing that might disgust us, which is bad for our health, might be the thing that's like pornography for the dung beetle or something, you know. Have y'all not considered that?
No, but it's like it is one of those things where it's like
the dung beetle's probably all up in it, like just
if
loving
you're feeling
life.
bad for your toilet, like maybe you're not giving them what You know he deserves. He deserves better than that.
Man.
Well, we started talking about psychedelics, so it was going to get to this point at some point.
Well, yeah, I recall Terrence McKenna saying that is boundary dissolving, right? So you can all of a sudden have a relationship with your toilet that you had never had before. You might see God in your toilet, for example.
Yeah.
And if God's everywhere, you know.
Yeah.
I'd just say what, Chad mentioned something like that earlier.
Well, I think somebody said it on like Grail Country, and it was like, it's a really trippy thought if you think about it. It's like, what would it be like to be like Jesus? And it would be like if you started seeing Jesus everywhere. And like how I just kind of had that vivid image of like, what if you literally just started seeing Jesus everywhere? I think there's something to it.
I think Jesus can find you anywhere.
It is too, I agree that it's like too high up. You can't operate well in that space. It's like Daniel when he has his visions. I mean, chosen prophet of God still gets like sick for months and months after one vision.
Yeah, I've been playing with this idea that pain is from God. Pain is the teacher. Like it's very like I can't if you try to imagine any kind of pain, I think it's possible to try to extract from that pain some type of knowledge which facilitates growth and transformation in order to embody and participate better.
Well, and I agree with that, which is why I find the notion that I've heard before of like evil is just the lack of being created. I find that like weird, where they're almost like saying evil doesn't exist in some way, or like God never created evil. It's just the lack of whatever. It's like I feel like God would create the demons, and I just think that's that can, to certain people that have had really tough experiences, that's probably not the best message for them,
What's not the best message for people who've had tough experiences specifically?
Basically saying that like God created the demons. God maybe created these things that do evil. I think that can disturb people, but nonetheless, like the truth can be disturbing.
Yeah, it's like the truth probably needs to be revealed in like some kind of sequence and order along the path.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes both ways. Like, if you figure God created the demons, then it's like, well, maybe I didn't suffer unduly,
I mean, this is why I think the psychedelics are dangerous, is because that shortcut can ruin you. Right? If there's a path that's winding through the woods and you take the shortcut, you might die. Right? Like, and there's people who do. There's people who end up crawling under their car in the middle of the winter, taking off their clothes and not feeling any cold, and they freeze to death. It's like, so there's some people get lucky. Maybe some people are just can handle it better than others because of the previous path. But yeah, it's super dangerous. It's super dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very big story at the time in my town. Was these two kids that took a lot of mushrooms. They ended up getting in this big fight, and one of them killed the other kid and just like ran away and didn't say anything about it until he kind of came down from his trip because he just couldn't believe that it was real. I mean, crazy stuff.
Yeah, it needs to be respected. Yeah, I think that the proper place for that is like it requires overseers who are administering the experience for the benefit of the patient. You don't want stuff like that to happen. You don't want any permanent damage happening because of this stuff. And ideally, you wouldn't even use it unless it was just like no other choice. some dark places you can go to in those on that.
Yeah, those have always been my. But those dark places are definitely probably some of the places you remember the most. You know.
Well, I think they reveal where people can be without the mind-altering experience. So, like, if you had a mind-altering experience, went to a dark place, or someone does, it's to me, it's informative. It tells me that's where minds can go, right? Even without mind-altering experiences, and so it's revelatory in that sense, and kind of can help you have empathy for others or patience or whatever.
All right, I'm gonna get off here. My phone's about to die. It's good to talk to y'all.
Good to talk to you.
Have a good one.
So what are you studying, Andrew?
Chemical engineering.
Chemical
engineering.
engineering. Yeah. How long have you been studying?
2 years.
Cool. I studied electrical and computer engineering.
Nice.
I had one chemistry class in college.
Yeah.
So how do you foresee using this chemical engineering knowledge?
Well, with luck, I'll get a job. That's about the long and end of it.
Make a new plastic?
Drill up some more oil.
Yeah. Or
I hear the market's not very good though, so we'll see.
I mean, you can discover some new
Doohickey.
application of something that exists, or or try to create, or something like that.
Yeah.
Material science, that's also in that realm, or is that more like mechanical engineering?
I mean, it might be more like mechanical engineering. Material science is more like creating new materials or like using materials to improve a product. Usually with chemical engineering, you're trying to optimize the process.
Okay.
Yeah, so like someone will be setting up a plant somewhere and you'll be drawing up the blueprints for it. You'll say, here's our intake, we have to, compress the gases first and then filter them and then start reacting them in a certain manner, and then maybe you have like recycle streams and you've got to account for heat. You don't want to heat up your pipes, you want to heat up your whatever reactant chamber.
So you'll try to reduce waste with your knowledge.
Yep, make more money. That's the whole point.
Increase efficiency, decrease waste. I got you.
It doesn't change the whole business doesn't change very much. It's
Gavin, you say you did computer engineering. Have you seen the Cerebras CS2 computer chip with 850,000 cores? I have not seen this. Cerebras. No, I have not seen this. And I'm not when I went to college, I didn't give it as much attention as I could have. I didn't get as much out of the experience as I could have. So I don't know. Maybe that's a cautionary. Maybe it's a cautionary tale that you have. Like, I remember having professors who would say, "I'm here until 6 p.m. every day, and you can come to my class. You can come to my office, and I'll help you." And I never took them up on it. Right? So there's a lot of things like that where there were opportunities where I could really get to know people, like networking. I did not understand how important networking was, and just learning from people who are experts and masters. Like, I did not take advantage of all the opportunities I had. I forked out the same amount of money, but I got like a 3.0 cruise through, played some World of Warcraft. Studied the night before for my test and stayed up all night drinking coffee.
Yep.
So That's what I did.
Mhm.
Can't change it. So do you have to take history class?
Um, I took whatever AP classes in high school, so not really.
That's nice.
Yeah, I love history though. You know, most of the history stuff here kind of gets my goat though.
What's that?
Most of the history stuff here kind of gets my goat though.
Okay. Yeah, are they impose? I guess my real question is, are they imposing classes on you so that you develop into the right kind of human but it's not necessarily related to chemical engineering?
Um, I mean, we have GEs. Most of the time, the good ones fill up, and then you're left with the scraps. I remember I had this info studies course that was taught by a postmodernist. I think she was a Marxist. I'm not too sure. Good thing about that class was you could just do all the assignments from home and then not go. So I finished the class on like week 2.
Yeah, those classes become hard when they are essay format. If you want to tell the truth and you disagree with the teacher. There was a question: what math are you in, Andrew?
Oh, currently I'm doing differential equations. It's not very hard. And people think that like smart people say math isn't hard. No, this math just isn't very hard. After that, I'm like done with the main math classes I need. I just have to take one more for a technical breath. So, should be fun.
It's strange. I almost did enough math where I could have got like a minor in math, but I haven't needed it and haven't used it very often. Like, because all I do is write software. I just get my robot to do the math for me, for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what do you pay attention to the most, Andrew? You're here in the corner of you. There's some people in like, who in the corner do you give your attention to?
In this little corner, Peugeot, Vervaeke, Jacob, Father Stephen DeYoung.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then outside of the corner.
I love to read.
Love to
My
read?
my roommates cannot understand that, but hey, I love to read.
I get addicted to science fiction books, but I know some people don't like science fiction books at all. What do you read?
Well, right now I'm going through some of the dialogues of Socrates, and
So science fiction. No, I'm just playing.
I did when I was younger. I did love science fiction. I remember I read I, Robot, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and what else? There was another good one. I've been reading the Three Body Problem audiobook, which is pretty neat. There's this one bit, there's this one bit where this guy like falls into a black hole, and according to like relativist physics, he's falling in there forever. Absolutely crazy. Like for him, he 2 minutes he's dead, but for everyone else, there's just this image of him falling forever. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, the sci-fi with the time bending physics is fun.
Yep. There's this group of people who just like they think that like the end of the universe is gonna be like a new Big Bang or whatever. So they're getting in like faster than light ships and just going, you know.
trying to escape the entropy death.
Yep.
That's great.
Uh-huh.
I've dug into so much sci-fi that I've forgotten it, and I've started revisiting it. But
Which ones are you revisiting?
most recently, and actually, I picked when I'm not reading sci-fi, I'm reading about like productivity and like project management stuff. But Brandon Sanderson, Mistborn trilogy is what I most recently started revisiting. I think Michael Sartori had mentioned that he had read it, and when he mentioned it, my brain is like not remembering the story. So I went, "Bless you."
Thank you. Yep. I've got loud ones.
Is the pollen getting out?
I think so. It's just coming out of winter, so you know.
So if the air we breathe is like the poop of the pollen, what is the poop of the tree? What is the pollen that's going in our nose? Oh man.
I'm not gonna answer that. You can
Yeah.
answer it if you want.
It just became pornographic. Plant pornography. I don't know if you caught. We briefly hit on the topic of pornography as we exited the topic of psychedelics.
Yeah. What's the one book that's impacted you the most?
The one book that hasn't. The Teachings of Don Juan by Carlos Castaneda.
Never heard of that one.
Yeah, it's shamanism. It's paganism. Yeah, I mean, like if anyone were to call me a Christian, I'd be the weirdest Christian you've ever met, the most blasphemous Christian you've ever met.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Father Stephen DeYoung. So are you attracted to Eastern Orthodoxy? Is that?
I mean, I'm Oriental Orthodox and Coptic Orthodox. I don't know if like you know what that means, but hey.
I heard the words Oriental Catholic Orthodox.
No, Coptic. It's like
Coptic.
Yeah. It's like Greek for Egyptian, you know. So
Okay.
kind of funky. It's basically just those churches that didn't accept Chalcedon. So, do you know what that refers to, or no? Okay.
I don't.
So Chalcedon says Christ has two natures, one divine, one human. Us Copts say that Christ has a divine human nature. And yeah, that's how we split.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess it's not a petty difference.
I mean, I think it's a petty difference nowadays. I think back then there were definitely linguistic differences and church politics going on and all sorts of stuff. Like, it's one of those splits in church history that you can tell it's just a bad split. Even afterwards, they're still trying to mend the schism from both sides. And then everything just falls apart when the Muslims invade and, like, we can't talk anymore, you know? So
Yeah.
now that, like, you know, there's a secular state in Egypt, well, supposedly, we can finally actually start talking. But, you know.
Okay.
There's hope. There's hope.
Yeah, it amazes me how people can believe so strongly. I guess it doesn't amaze me. It's just an observation. People believe so strongly about things that they will do the murdering and up to murdering and everything from ignoring to murdering, I guess. End up creating new denominations and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Man,
We have this
pretty powerful belief. I mean, that's, you know.
Yeah, we have this icon of Saint Samuel the Confessor, and usually in icons we don't show like wounds or anything, right? Like, you know, you're in Christ now, like you can't be harmed. You're chilling, you know. The icon for Saint Samuel, his like right eye is just gone. Yeah, it's insane.
I don't get the icon. I'm sure it means something to you and to many people.
Like you pray with an icon, you know. So like seeing, it's like an image of a saint, you know. So when you see one, it's like, yeah, that's who I should emulate, you know. That's someone who can pray for me. Oh, there he goes. Oh, now we've got good audio, but you know, only me. It might be because they've just finished with midterms, but like today is hella beautiful. Like
Hello?
things are just crisp. Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, trying to fix my audio.
Did it work?
The audience will say. So Samuel has a missing eye. And what is that icon again?
I mean, it's just an icon of him. Usually we have like icons of saints, and they take like the prayer pose or whatever, like this, like Iran's. I don't know. I can't get both my arms in the image. Like this, you know, praying up towards God. So usually you just like, you go up to that icon, you say, Saint Samuel, intercede for me on my behalf. This, pray for me, you know. So seeing one with like their eye out it's a rad image, you know.
So like Samuel intervened and lost an eye, like was serious in the conflict.
Yeah, he was tortured to death, so you know, it's crazy.
Okay.
Like, and he wasn't like an idiot either. He was like actually, you know, embroiled in the debate. So yeah, I know some priests who say that like the Muslim invasion at the start was a good thing because it liberated us from the Romans. And like, yeah, what can you do?
We can retcon every event and explain why it was meaningful, such that it was good for us.
Yeah.
I'm gonna break for a meal soon.
I'm breaking for one right now.
Yeah. Well, I guess I could bring one back up and have a meal with you. If anyone wants to hop in. Yeah, I'm not worried. And I'm saying the truth. Let's see.
I'm always good at running my mouth.
Yeah. You can get in trouble for doing that.
Yep. I can and I have.
Yeah. That means, yeah, if I was your age, I would not be on I would not want to be sharing everything on the internet like this. Yeah. So.
Yep. You know, this is gonna sound crazy. The good thing about like having no community is that I can share everything and none of it comes back to me, you know?
I got you. Yeah, I think I've made that point regarding Jacob. Like, you know, if I have a community with Jacob, then will I get in trouble and will my family get impacted by the things Jacob says, right? So then it's like, well, you know, I love Jacob. I just have to distance myself from Jacob just a little bit so that people know that I don't agree with everything Jacob says. I actually agree with a lot of the things he says, but I think he's wrong about a lot too. Uh-oh. I think I lost Andrew. the battery died. Oh, there he's back. I lost you for just a minute, Andrew.
Mm.
Just do some mukbang, Gavin. I don't know the reference.
These YouTubers, they just get a ton of food. They sit in front of a camera and they just like eat and talk about it.
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think I'm going to contribute to that activity. I'm the kind of person who will go eat Vienna sausages and bologna sandwiches. And you could lay a bologna sandwich next to pretty much anything in the world. And I will not appreciate whatever you option. Like, yeah, I don't really appreciate food as much as a lot of people do. I grew up on bologna sandwiches and Vienna sausages, so. And fish and deer and squirrel and rabbit.
For me, it was mac and cheese.
Mac and cheese. I had some of that too. Hamburger helper.
You know, growing up, it was Kraft. But nowadays, my mom likes just any type of mac and cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my two daughters. That's their favorite.
Yeah, it's a good one. In quarantine, we got these just like huge packets of mac and cheese. I think there was one day where I ate like 7 of those straight, and ever since I've like held off. You know, it's been crazy.
I see Mo is back in the background. He can hide from
Get
the
him in
audience.
here.
I can throw him in here too. I have the power.
Yeah.
Hey,
What
I'm
are you
back.
doing back there? How's it going?
I just got on my computer. I was checking some messages real fast.
I think I'm gonna step away and go grab some food.
All right, that's actually what I ended up doing. I stepped away for something else, but I was hungry, so I grabbed some food while I was out.
Yeah. All right. You guys have a good one.
Yep.
All right, you
Good
too.
talking to you, man.
If you ever want me to come back, you just say the word psychedelic 3 times. I'm just playing. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So what were you guys talking about?
We were just on the topic of comfort food. A bit before that, it was books. But what's your comfort food?
Oh, that's a tough one. What is my comfort food? Whatever's available. Usually something like easy and deep fried. It's one of those things where I tend to munch a bit, but I don't always have go-tos. You know, I don't know that I ever had like necessarily the luxury of it. It's just kind of like when I'm hungry, I want to not be hungry anymore. I'm trying to get Gavin back.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember, you know, before I went to college, I was pretty much homeless. You know, I would couch surf. Sometimes I would sleep in my car. But I would eat peanut butter and jelly for breakfast and for lunch every day. And then dinner, a lot of times I'd be out working or something, or sometimes with friends, and I would eat dinner out. But I did that for about 2 months straight, peanut butter and jelly for breakfast and lunch every day. If you're ever homeless, I highly recommend it.
Peanut butter jelly.
Yep. It's cheap. The
And you
bread.
can get like different types of jellies, and that just changes the whole sandwich.
Yep. It really does. And so you got your protein, You got some carbs. It'll fill you up. I mean, a
Yeah.
couple of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and you're fine.
Mhm.
Take this out. What do you got going on today?
Right now, it is like beautiful as heck. Like, I don't know if I can get this on camera, but it's like, I don't know. The sun's shining off everything.
Beautiful. That's those were the days where I would be definitely not going to class.
Today ain't too bad. I had a discussion in the morning that I didn't go to, and I've got class at 2. So, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Typically, what would happen on a day like today is, even if I had an afternoon class, I would be sitting out, in like the little courtyard area of my college, and then pretty soon a few friends would join me, and then we would start talking crap and like joking around and whatever. And it's like class would come. It's like, well, we're just having a good time, so
Mhm.
I guess I'm not going to class today.
Yeah, yesterday, like everyone popped onto the just chatting stream. I think Jacob got his new cat, and that just drew everyone in, you know. And
Apparently, there's a lot of cat people, huh?
yep. I'm slowly becoming one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I was a dyed-in-the-wool dog person, but my roommate loves cats, and there's a lot of cats on campus here. So
My kids want a cat.
yeah,
And I'm allergic to cats.
me as well. So it poses a problem.
Yeah, so I'm considering the possibility of just sucking it up and dealing with the allergies, but we'll see. They also kind of want a dog, but my wife doesn't really like dogs very much. And they're a lot more responsibility.
Yeah.
When I met my wife, I had a really large dog. My wife didn't care for her very much.
Really?
Yeah, and my wife doesn't like big dogs. And not only was my dog big, but she was also very hyper. Kind of didn't realize how big she was, and so really enjoyed sitting on my lap and stuff like that, and it would just drive my wife crazy.
That's the good stuff, though.
That's stuff that I love, but
Yeah.
my wife doesn't see it the same way.
You can get like an old, medium-sized dog.
That's what she says. She says, if we got like a smaller or medium-sized dog, she'd be okay. Which I guess I'm okay with. I like all dogs, but I really like the big dogs.
Yeah. You can just hug them.
Yeah. And you can play rough.
Yep.
Oh man, I love wrestling. Give me a big Rottweiler and let's roll around for a little bit.
Yeah. I've got a corgi back home. When she was little, she was like real feisty. So she'd start like running around the house, scratching up the hardwood floors, jumping on all the furniture. Yep. And so we'd pick her up, like calm down, and then she'd turn over and just like put a paw against our face, look away.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta love that, man. Especially the dogs are just so loyal. And there's something about that you gotta love.
Did I pop out for a sec?
If you did, it was for a very short sec.
Mm.
Did you say something in that very short sec?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The dog's becoming a sleepy dog, though.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain degree, that's what my wife likes about cats is that they kind of mostly just sleep.
Yeah.
They're there. They don't really do a whole lot, and I guess there's advantages to that, but not quite my cup of tea.
It's the little moments of the cats, you know. Like dog, they're very approachable.
Mm-hmm.
I guess with cats, it's like you gotta build it up, and building it up ain't hard, you know. You just live
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah, and I think another part of it is just especially for big dogs. There's a danger involved in it, right? And to a certain degree, I kind of appreciate that I feel confident navigating that danger.
It is like seriously beautiful as that view.
It is not here.
Is it cloudy, cold?
Yeah, it's cloudy and cold. I mean,
Man.
it's still winter,
Yeah, I get you.
but spring is coming. It'll be here soon enough.
Yep. Has Groundhog Day happened yet?
Yes.
What do you say?
He said he saw his shadow,
Whoa.
but his ex-wife says he's lying. So we'll see. I mean, it's actually it's been a more moderate winter this year. It hasn't been terribly cold, outside of maybe a couple of days. But and it hasn't snowed a lot. But I'm still ready for it to be done.
Yeah, for us here in LA, it's like the complete opposite. It's like the coldest it's been in years. We had hail once, which is crazy.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
What the hell? That's what we call a dad joke.
Yeah. So
You'll get there. Although my son already loves dad jokes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How old's he?
He's 8.
Wow. Is he a ruffian?
No, my son's remarkably mild-mannered.
That's good.
I was very much the same way when I was young, but I had 3 older brothers, and I grew up in a rougher environment, and so I had to learn real quick to not always be as mild-mannered as I'd like to be. But he doesn't necessarily have those same pressures. So it's just weird because I'm not sure how much of it like he needs to know for survival purposes, and how much I can just be okay with him being mild-mannered.
Yeah. I went from being like an only child to having 2 roommates, and that was kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's so for me, I grew up. I'm the youngest of 5 kids, so I never had my own room. And then my parents moved away when I was a senior in high school, and so I was homeless for a little while. And then I moved into the dorms, and I had a roommate. So then I moved back into my parents, but my parents were living with my brother and sister and her 2 kids. And so even then, I was still sharing a room with my 10-year-old nephew. And so I didn't get my own room until I bought my first house.
Wow.
So like my wife had her own room for like forever. So it's like she had to kind of get used to sharing a room with me. But I was like, this is business as usual. Bubblevis wants to know what your favorite anime is.
There's this one that's a movie called Jinro the Wolf Brigade. Very well done. It's by a famous director. I think he's done some other like classic animes. Other than that, I don't really watch like the episodic ones, you know.
Hi, Alex.
Hello. Yeah. I've been looking at Cowboy Bebop, and that's about it.
What's everyone talking about?
What'd you say?
What's everyone talking about? What's the conversation? Seems kind of slow.
Yep.
That's how it feels. I feel that.
What do you want to talk about, Alex?
I don't know. I don't even know why I'm here right now. So.
Andrew was just telling us his favorite anime.
Yeah. I didn't hear what he said. Which one it was?
Jinro the Wolf Brigade. You've probably never heard of it. It's kind of a cult classic.
I feel like all of them are cult classics.
Yeah, kind of.
There are only a handful that aren't.
Yep. Recently, I've been interested in like Chainsaw Man. Oh, I've got a helicopter.
I don't watch any anime, so I don't know what any of these are.
Well, just imagine you just take a weird idea and you make the whole story about that weird idea. That's all it is.
Yep.
That's mostly what it is.
Except for Jinro,
So,
which is what I like appreciate about it. It's actually like not
what is it?
crazy. Jinro,
What is
the
it?
Wolf Brigade. Jinro, the Wolf
Wolf,
Brigade.
the Wolf Brigade.
Yeah.
What's it about?
So like, you know, in Japan, how they like got completely occupied by the Americans.
Yeah.
It's like it's like the personal story of a military police officer dealing with a bunch of insurrectionists and possible communists, and trying not to lose his soul. It's pretty interesting. It's like,
Yeah.
you know how there's this idea that like anime is just the cultural cope of Japanese people trying to deal with like the two atom bombs. It's like under that idea, Jinro is like completely addressing the whole thing, you know?
Okay.
Yeah. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I do know World War II is is kind of like how in America it is one of those ingrained things in their minds.
Yep.
Although I guess in America we have more than one war. Like we have World War II in Vietnam and stuff like that. But it seems like Japan has World War II and mostly that. I don't know if that's true. I just remember seeing it a lot.
You know, I think they store all the unused plants here, and then just like nobody remembers to water them. I don't know.
How much should a bag of chips cost?
$1. I've got no idea.
How much do a bag of chips cost? When I was a kid, a bag of chips was 25 cents.
Really?
Because I was walking around and I'm looking at this and it's just like, it's like $4, like $4.50 up to, some of them are like $7. I'm like, are they really $5 for a bag of chips?
Yeah.
Or am I going crazy? It's like, is it just this store? Like, what's going on with that?
Inflation.
Yeah, but it's chips. It's like, how does inflation get so bad that a bag of chips costs $5?
I don't even know. A little bit above my pay grade.
But it's not like everything else is really high. I feel like I just felt like something about that was extremely wrong.
Man, they got a plant growing out of cup. Look at that.
I can't see it.
There's 5.
It's hard to
here,
see
okay.
in this.
I'll get closer. What's he doing?
It's just sitting there.
Yeah.
$45 in vending machines. That's nuts to me.
Yeah, vending machines are just complete rip-offs.
Yep.
Unless you can get 2 for 1, which I've been able to do that several times. Get a 2 for 1.
Rip off the rip-offs.
Well, yeah, you just you look at where the twisty thing is, where the dispenser is. If it's in the right position, it's like, okay, this has the highest chance of giving you a 2 for 1, and you press that one. And that's because it's kind of has how it comes out. Like, it might not come out the right way, so you have to watch for how it's going to fall down.
Yeah, California's crazy. Prices. Everyone's like, yeah, minimum wage here is, I think here in LA it's like, what, $17.50, something like that, which is like,
What is?
yeah, that's minimum wage.
Oh,
Yeah, it's like, yeah, that's good money, but it doesn't buy anything here.
Florida's going to get up to. They passed a bill to raise the minimum wage by $1 every year until it reaches 15. So that's what's going on.
Yeah. I wrote a speech against minimum wage back in high school.
Just like all minimum wage, against all of
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
You remember it?
I think I called, in the middle of it, I called like government robbers not fit to deliver the justice they purport to protect, something like that. I'm pretty sure my whatever debate judge was not pleased with the speech after that.
Are you still
You could
against
get
minimum
elected.
wage?
Well, you could get
Yes,
elected if you say it, though. It's like you might get a bad grade, but you could get elected.
Not here in California, but yes, I'm still against the minimum wage.
Yeah, it's one of those where I feel like so many people jump on that, not necessarily understanding how that works, the complications of income in the marketplace, and how even the minimum wage affects inflation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a cope just a temporary cope. I don't know if there's supposed to be a plan to alleviate that in the future, or if they're one of those. What's that one financial, like that one economic theory that basically says inflation is not important at all? I forget what it's called, but the idea
Modern
is
monetary
it
theory.
doesn't. Huh?
Modern monetary theory.
No, I think it's called something else. But the idea is that it doesn't matter what inflation is, because if you just, if you can basically compensate for it forever, and it just doesn't actually matter.
Crazy.
I guess it depends on how long term, your level of resolution, right? I mean, that's kind of where a lot of this comes
Yeah.
back to. If you're
Yeah, it's
looking
like
at it,
if you're looking at it as just numbers, it's like, okay, that makes sense, because who honestly cares?
yeah.
Like, if it's just numbers.
But like right now, where it seems like inflation is up, but income and wages are not, then it's like,
Yeah, so
okay,
they raise the wages.
hopefully they'll raise the wages at some point, right?
Yep.
But it's one of those things, and they will, right? It's always going to happen. But it's in the meantime, during that transition period where it doesn't get raised, well, that causes some serious problems for some people. All right, guys. Well, I actually have to run, and I'm like, neither of you has the moderating permissions, right?
I've got no idea. I'm pretty sure I don't.
Yeah. So that means I'm gonna have to end this broadcast. Probably won't be back tomorrow, but we'll be back on Monday. I'm sure somebody will do it tomorrow. It just won't be me.